Here's Simon Roberts, Chief Executive of Sainsbury Supermarkets Limited since 2020. And here's one of his minions, Chris Latchford, Manager of Sainsbury's City Centre store in Winchester. Hello, my name's Teresa Skelton. I'm nothing special. I'm a housewife who lives in Winchester. I strongly oppose corruption and abuse of power. That's why I support the Justice and Anti-Corruption Party. And here's my election leaflet, 6th of May 2021. I was the only candidate who opposed lockdown. I am naturally against enforced mask wearing. Even so, I have a perfectly valid exemption. On the 20th of October 2020, I had the most interesting shopping experience. Just after 7 a.m, I walked into the little Sainsbury store. There was no one there, not even a security guard. I said hello to the lady who was on the cigarette kiosk. I walked round the store. I think there was only one other customer there. There were Sainsbury's workers stocking shelves and doing what they usually do in the morning. I then walked down the beers, spirits and wine aisle, and there was a gentleman up a little ladder stocking wines on the top shelf. After I had passed, I did hear a gruff shout. I didn't realise it was for me until I'd got to the self-checkout area where I was pushed from behind. A man's arm came right round the back of me to grab my basket. Not much social distancing there. This turned out to be none other than store manager Chris. It turned out that he was hard on my heels as I got to the checkout. There are his feet as he backed me into the corner. In fact, as he crowded me against the checkout machine, he was standing just like the pose here, except that he was masked up and his eyes were bulging with rage. He demanded that I leave immediately because I wasn't wearing a mask. When I told him I was exempt and even pointed to the sign in the shop window that allowed exemptions, he just became more aggressive, wanting to know what was wrong with me, which I told him he had no right to ask. He was close to reason, even threatening at one point to throw me out. Hoping he wasn't going to follow me, I fled the shop as quickly as possible after paying for my goods. As I left the store, Chris declared me banned. Well, of course, I put in a complaint to Sainsbury's about behaviour like this, but just listen to what they came back with. Exactly a month after the event, I got a reply from Chris's line manager, Hayley Wilson. Listen to this. On the day in question, you arrived at our Winchester store without a face covering, and our store manager, who was greeting customers at the front of store, therefore offered you a free disposable mask. As he didn't know whether you had a genuine reason for not wearing a face covering, he did not question you on your reason for not wearing one, nor did he refuse you entry to the store. He simply offered you a free mask. As the approach adopted by the store manager was in line with our policy, I am comfortable that he did the right thing. Miss Wilson then goes on to describe me as behaving like some sort of maniac. Just there. Following the store manager's offer, I understand that you became abusive towards him and were shouting that it was against the law to ask, despite my manager repeatedly explaining that he had simply offered you a mask and that it was no problem if you didn't want one. You continued to shout at him in a way that he perceived to be both aggressive and abusive. I understand that he then asked you to leave the store, a request that you refused to comply with and responded to by saying, wait for it everybody, that you would get your husband to come down and sort him out. He then repeated his request for you to leave the store, which you again refused. You then paid for your shopping at one of our self-service tills, whilst continuing to shout at him. The incident ended with our manager explaining to you that he would be banning you from the shop, a decision which was later communicated to you in writing. This email ended with, "Kind regards, Hayley." Well, quite a few whoppers here. If Hayley had got this tale from Chris, he obviously found it hard to keep his lies straight. For a start, what was he doing in the middle of lockdown, greeting non-existent customers at the front door at 7 o'clock in the morning? Well, I had to take my complaint further. After I spent a couple of months trying to get some sense from Sainsbury's dispute resolution department, I got this back on 13th of January 2021 from their legal bods. I understand that you attended the Sainsbury's Winchester store on the morning of Saturday 3rd of October 2020. While shopping in the beer, wine and spirits aisle, our colleague asked if you had a mask or if you would require one. You responded aggressively, shouting at our colleague. When asked to lower your voice, you refused. At this stage, our colleague asked you to leave the store. Instead, you proceeded to the self-scan checkouts. Our colleague accompanied you to request that you left the store. CCTV footage of your altercation at the checkout shows our colleague standing behind you while you completed your shopping. Occasionally, you turn to gesture and shout at our colleague. We are informed that you told our colleague your husband, who is 70 years old, I'm 60, and this store manager must be in his 40s, would attend the store to sort him out. You will appreciate that aggressive and or intimidating behaviour towards our colleagues is unacceptable. The email then goes on to say, I understand that your complaint relates to the discrepancy in your account of events and the correspondence which you received from Hayley Wilson on 4th of November 2020. I can see from Hayley's email that she had mistakenly referred to the altercation occurring at the entrance to the store. A somewhat different narrative from Hayley Wilson's, cherry-picking the bits and pieces of her storyline that suits Sainsbury's angle. No explanation as to why, if one part of the tale is unreliable, the rest can be believed. The beer and wine shelves are about as far as you can get from the entrance. All this could have been settled by viewing the full CCTV footage of my entry into Sainsbury's to my departure. But no. Sainsbury's had every excuse for denying me any access to footage showing Chris and his actions. All I got was a couple of minutes of myself at the self-checkout. This is the frontage of Sainsbury's store. The entrance is there where the shopping trolleys are. The very end aisle is here where the spirits, beers and wines are. It was coming into the self-checkout area that Chris Latchford ambushed me. You can see a whole lot of CCTV monitors inside the shop. It's full of them. All along down the aisles. The one at the end covered me at the checkout. Others will have spotted me wherever I went. Sainsbury's will have had a complete record of everything I did. So why were they so keen to get rid of it? One thing's for sure, manager Chris didn't seem to like me videoing when I later stood outside his store to gather this evidence. First, he came out to confront me, then thought better of it, turned tail and went back in. The sign says, "Please keep a safe distance." Look at Chris, not keeping a safe distance from this gentleman any more than he kept a safe distance from me. I warned Sainsbury's 5 days after the incident to retain all CCTV in case of legal action against them. According to the civil procedure rules, this should have been done once placed on notice of my possible intentions. Simon Roberts, Sainsbury's chief executive, claims in his CV that he is, quote, "a dedicated, determined and enthusiastic champion of the customer," unquote. I can't say I ever saw any evidence of this from the behaviour of his firm. Sainsbury's stonewalled me over the CCTV from first to last. To begin with, they would not disclose it for data protection reasons, then because they deleted it. Finally, they refused so much as to respond when I pointed out that material can be easily recovered from a hard drive even after deletion. I wrote to Mr. Roberts, laying out my case and seeking his help to get a resolution. I pointed out that I didn't even know whether Hayley Wilson had viewed the CCTV footage or not before coming out with her nonsensical account of what had happened. From Mr. Roberts, I never heard a word. I did launch a legal claim against Sainsbury's. This was struck out by the judge because I was out of time with my application, so the evidence was never heard. One reason for this was that I needed the CCTV to make my case, and Sainsbury's just dragged things out with their failure to agree to supply it. Just the way things go. The most interesting part of the argument used by Sainsbury's to get the case thrown out of court was their reference to my Facebook page. Just listen to this. The claimant has published via social media her objection to wearing masks, disparaging views on the COVID-19 virus, and efforts by the government or the public to curb its spread. Let's have a peek. Vernon Coleman, I shared that on the 17th of November. UK column. A gentleman talking about the spike protein inside a nucleus. Somebody tagged me. Rupert Murdoch told PM he must get rid of the BBC. Candice Owen, I value her opinion. UK column. UK column. A funeral director describing his observations. Not UK column again. Oh, UK column, UK column. Candice Owen. Old man in a chair, that terrifying Dr. Vernon Coleman. UK column, I shared that on the 28th of October. Stu Peters. Sky News with Boris, I'll come back to that later. A poor lady who died in a police cell. UK column. UK column. UK column. Another funeral director describing his observations. UK column. A card. UK column. Dr. Vernon Coleman. UK column. UK column. A couple of petitions there. A card. UK column. UK column. A man giving his opinions. UK column, and I shared that on the 28th of September. Dr. Vernon Coleman. Dr. Vernon Coleman. UK column. UK column. A card. UK column. UK column. Now this, I think, is absolutely outrageous. And the card says the hunger virus doesn't appear on TV because hunger doesn't kill the rich. What's wrong with that card? UK column. A young British soldiers and veterans killed themselves since Afghanistan invasion, and that's over 2,000. Norfolk unsolved murder. UK column shared that on the 11th of September. A petition about all the dogs that are stolen. Unsolved murder. Peter Miller. Dr. Vernon Coleman. Hugo talks. The Taliban that don't seem to die of any illness whatsoever. A poor lad, ill because he drank energy drinks. Hugo talks. Not UK column again, and that was shared on the 21st of August. Dr. Vernon Coleman with a message in front. Delete that. There we go. Hugo talks. Hugo talks. UK column. UK column. UK column. I'm getting tired of saying UK column, but that's another UK column. UK column, 26th of July. Stu Peters. Dr. Vernon Coleman. UK column, 20th July. 18th of July, I shared the card again. And I'll stop there. 17th of July, UK column news. This is the kind of shock, horror, down with this sort of thing material Sainsbury's solicitor would be referring to. Now let's look at their second point. Teresa Skelton criticises neighbours during clap for carers. Hampshire Chronicle. The claimant's views also extend to an utter disregard in the media for essential workers, which would explain her response to the engagement at the store as described in paragraph 12 to 16 of the defence. Back in 2020, my neighbours knew I wasn't going to join in with the nightly clapping on the doorsteps. I had no disregard for the key workers, only for the public narrative we were being given about them. That's why I staged a counter demo on my own doorstep. The officially inspired ritual was just another psychological trick to bring us into line. I certainly had no regard for the delusion that the doctors and nurses were ever going to get a big pay rise. Was I wrong? At the time, I had to put up with a bit of abuse, some of it from my neighbours, most of whom are now speaking to me, none of whom are clapping or bashing pots and pans anymore, some of it from further afield, a lot of it stirred up by our local newspaper. Here it is, dated 21st of May 2020. My reply went on YouTube on 28th of May 2020. Chris Latchford's hostility towards me did seem very personal. In a spirit of sincere friendship, I recommend Chris Latchford and his former bosses at Sainsbury's, including Mr. Roberts, to log into brand new tube, BNT, where they will find UK column, Dr. Vernon Coleman, Hugo Talks and others. They might broaden their horizons and perhaps even learn things not on the BBC, including the self-harming idiocy of mask wearing, etc.